biggest and most powerful law enforcement agency in the United States, has the absolute non-negotiable power to ignore laws, judges, and prosecutors, to keep people out of prison, to make any jury trial come out the way they want it, and to make our government honest. Who is this agency? The fully informed jury. So I think that sums it up. It's a great little saying on that. And take any questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Your comment about how those leafleters were, I guess, busted or threatened with obstructing the public walkways reminded me of a tactic we used back before I escaped California. So when we were doing open carry demonstrations there, they had these things called gun-free school zones, which was anywhere within 1,000 feet of a school. And so what we would do is we would call the cops ahead of time and say, we would like to request a civil standby for a demonstration, which basically means the cops are supposed to come out and protect you against hecklers. And we'd ask them, okay, we want you to tell us where this line is.
Right, measure this out. Yeah.
So we make sure we're on the right side of it. So they can, in theory, do this for these leafleters. They could say, okay, we don't want to obstruct the public walkway, so you tell us where we can stand and hand these out. Make sure this doesn't happen.
Yeah, there are ways. I mean, you can. I mean, the courts have held you can put people in a certain place. Yeah, I mean, I think that's overused and illegitimate. But that's where we are. Russ.
I haven't heard this before, and you've mentioned it numerous times, and nobody asked about it, but I thought no trial could be retried. Nobody can be retried for the same crime that they were acquitted from.
Acquitted is 12.
You have to be acquitted.
Well, okay, so hold it. But you were saying that if one juror...
Hung jury?
No, if one jury says he's not guilty,
right,
then... Aren't you not guilty?
No.
What happens then?
That's a hung jury.
What defines a hung jury?
A non-unanimous decision by the jury. Anything that's not unanimous. Yep. Right.
An acquittal is they all unanimously agree you're not guilty.
Yes.
And then you cannot be retried.
Correct.
If it's hung, you can be retried.
Correct.
Can you be retried as long as it's a hung?
Yeah, they could retry you 8 or 9 times. But what happens is usually the DA goes, all right, I'm not going to spend any more time on this. That's happened several times. I mean, they usually won't go 8 or 9 times, but they've done 3 or 4. And if they keep getting, if they can't get a conviction, eventually they go, all right, we're going to stop. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But that's a political decision because every DA is elected. U.S. attorneys are appointed, but DAs are elected.
That's my other question. That protects against some yahoo who comes in, happens to sit through the entire proceedings, and then gets to the deliberation phase with the jury, and just like, I'm just going to be a jerk. I don't like you guys. He's not guilty. Then they can be retried.
They can retry it.
Okay.
Right. Yep, they can. So that's not a violation of double jeopardy.
The difference, though, in that death penalty phase, just one guy,
correct,
and there's no going back.
Correct. Death penalty, the sentencing phases don't have to be unanimous. But most criminal cases, the jury doesn't decide the sentencing. Right. That's what's unusual about a death penalty case. The jury has to decide that unanimously if he's going to get the execution. But if it's a bank robbery, the jury doesn't say, well, let's give this guy 8 years. They have nothing to do with it. Yes.
Can you clarify? You made a statement that common law is not law, that there has to be statute.
For a crime. For a crime. Okay, the state cannot prosecute you for a crime unless you've got notice of it, basically.
Okay, so common law is about restoration of rights and restoring the injured party. And there has to be an injured party and things like that. So statutes that align with that is what you're talking about.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that there's lots of common law.
Right.
Lots of it. But you cannot be convicted of a crime based on violating the common law.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Align with that
correct
principle.
Well, I mean, the legislature can make up something and create a new crime that has nothing to do with the common law.
Right. Well,
most of them, like theft and assault and all that, comes from the common law.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to clarify that because there are statutes that are totally repugnant to the Constitution, as versus Madison says.
Absolutely, and that's when you nullify.
Right, and then Miranda too. There will be no rulemaking when it's concerned constitutional rights, and that's violated all the time with the statutes. So I just want to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope we clarified it. Right, yes, sir.
It seems to me that the degree of how stupid you think the law is determines if you want to do this nullification bid. For example, I've been on a number of cases, including murder cases and so forth. But the main thing was, the one that really got me, I was up in Weld County and on a jury of 2 kids fighting in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
And it turns out, evidently, it's a higher degree of how bad you are when you're in the schoolyard versus outside the schoolyard.
Yeah, the statute probably says it's an aggravator.
And so here were 2 kids
just having a fight,
and one of them, took it to court. And here we had 12 jurors all day long, from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 in the afternoon.
Yep.
And when we finally, the jury said, well, if it's a law and we prove default, and both the kids seem to do as much, involved as much as the other, we had to go ahead and convict the guy. And of course, the judge came in later and just said, okay, we sentenced him to 3 hours of anger management.
Right.
But we spent the whole day for many people doing that.
Well, if that happens next time, you can say, I don't care what the judge said. I'm not going to convict this guy. You can do that. Oh, and I'll go back to, I mentioned the Time to Kill book. It's fiction, but it's a great example of the Samuel L. Jackson character in the movie did it. He premeditatedly killed this guy. All right. But his lawyer, is it Matthew McConaughey? Yeah, and Sandra Bullock. Right. All right. We have to have some reason to give the jury a reason, or something to give the jury a reason to acquit. And so it was the insanity defense. Well, it wasn't legitimate, but that gave the jury a reason and a way to find him not guilty. That's jury nullification. That's a great fictional version of jury nullification.
So if New Hampshire couldn't implement jury nullification through the statutes, through the legislature, what could we do here to get this going?
Well, New Hampshire can still do it by legislation. They're just going to have to rewrite it to overcome whatever the Supreme Court of New Hampshire said and validated it. So,
and whatever this dude says is
right, exactly. Well, sometimes you'll see that in a piece of legislation in the preamble. Given the Supreme Court's holding in we are writing this to change that outcome. They'll do that sometimes.
What do you think is the best strategy, though, for people in Colorado? Is this the legislature to do this?
Yeah, I think there's a growing movement for this type of. If you sell it as education, people need to know their rights. Who can be against people knowing their rights? Well, a lot of people can, but that's how you sell it. So I think a piece of legislation is possible, but just letting people know. Because you're not going to be told once you get to the courthouse. You got to know it before you get there. Yes.
I was going to ask, speaking of education, are there any classes on jury nullification in any of the law schools or any of the continuing legal education that lawyers have to take?
I went to law school for 3 years and it was never brought up.
Rachel, how about you?
Nope.
Yeah, right.
Never heard of it.
In law school, at least.
Right. So.
The thing we cannot talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Voldemort, right? Right. Yes, sir.
This is kind of towards the jury's power. In that same case up there, I never had this before, but here was a formal trial, 12 juries, everybody, and they made the comment at the beginning, the jury can ask questions.
Yeah.
I didn't know that could happen.
Yep, they can do that now. That's a state law that if, and I've had that happen in jury trials. Any juror, the way that would work is a juror would just write out the question, hand it to the bailiff. The bailiff takes it to the judge. If the judge doesn't want to ask it, they don't have to. If the judge thinks, all right, but then both attorneys get to come up and see the question too. And if either one of them wants to object, they can object to it. Now, the judge might overrule their objection, but at least they get some input on it. And usually, if the jury wants to know something, they should be allowed to ask it. I guess there could be something completely irrelevant off the wall, but that's the procedure.
The example I asked the question was that here were 2 kids. One was in trial. They had the other kid as a witness
yep.
and so forth. and they never brought up what happened to him. So
Right.
I wrote up the question, was the other kid arrested too?
Right.
And they did answer, yes, he was.
All right. That's good.
Oh, interesting.
That's good. I'm kind of surprised they told you that. Yeah. I'm glad they did, though. Yes. And then we'll go back.
I've always wondered, what is the application of this to civil cases?
If you it's the same idea. It's exactly the same notion. If, let's say, you've got a medical malpractice case, and I'm just trying to come up with something. A discrimination case, sure. So let's do med mal first, and then you can say that, yeah, this guy was negligent, caused some damage, but if the jury had some reason to go, but still, I don't want to find this guy negligent, they could. So that would be jury nullification. I don't know what reason that would be, but they could do it. But a discrimination case, yeah. You could say, I'm not going to convict a guy for not baking a cake. Yeah. He's in violation of the rule. He's in violation of the law. Can't argue he's not. He's in violation of the law. He admits he's in violation of the law. I mean, hypothetically here. The jury can go, but I'm not going to convict him. I guess that is a criminal case. But no, you're right. It could be a civil rights case, right? It could be a civil rights case where somebody is suing for damages for not giving the cake or for not hiring for the job or whatever. So there's something like that. That would be a civil application of it. Yeah. Or if it's a contract case, the jury can go, yeah, that party violated the contract. Contract says X, he didn't do it. He's in violation of the contract, but there's some other reason that we think that was justified.
Or if the contract said, I'll get your firstborn son, you should
Yeah.
always sign this off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's
I know there's other means to.
there's unconscionable doctrine, but yeah, that's the idea. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was just on that subject, there was an Italian restaurant that was serving Caesar salad, and the guy said, "I'm a vegetarian. Is there anything meat in this?" Oh, no. And by golly, he sued him. It was a restaurant there in Boulder, and the jury said, "Yes, by golly, you win. They really weren't vegetarian. They did have anchovies in that salad, and you were hereby awarded $1."
Yeah, exactly.
So,
right. Yeah, that happens too.
Value of the anchovy.
Right.
What I could raise my hand for was the penalty phase. The man talked about the kids, where it turned out the penalty was 3 hours of anger management.
Right.
Well, I witnessed a Bitcoin case where, a guy sold a Bitcoin in a bar, and what'd you do? You lose, that's technically a felony.
Right.
Well, it turns out they wanted to put him away for a year, and the jury couldn't find out ahead of time.
Right.
So in terms of this fully informed jury, is there any way to get information to the jury about what the penalty is for this kind of a crime?
Not current. The current law specifically keeps the jury from knowing what the penalty is. So it would take legislation. I'm in fully informed jury. It means just that. You know what the range of punishments are, so you can take that into account. The people in control don't want the jury to do that, but I think they should. They should know what it is.
Death penalty cases, you do know.
Correct. Yes, you do know what a death penalty case. Russ.
Let's say you get on a jury and you don't get asked any questions that would perjure you, go through no process, go to the room to deliberate. At that time, is there nothing stopping say one of us who knows this from informing everybody then on the jury that, hey guys, they didn't talk about this in there, but we decide the law and the facts. Or we don't decide the facts, but we decide the law in relation
Well, you can determine what the facts are based on the evidence. But yeah, absolutely, you can say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing. There's no clerk recorder or videotape.
And even if there was, it would.
Yeah, it cannot punish you for anything what you say in that jury.
In that case, could a juror be charged with jury tampering in the deliberation room?
I think that's how
You are.
That's I'm not going to say some grandstanding DA might not try that, but the jury is allowed to deliberate, and I don't think that would go anywhere. Now, to be on the safe side, I wouldn't say the words nullification. I would say this isn't just. In my conscience, I cannot convict this guy.
12 angry young men. It's
Right.
angry old men or whatever.
Right. I mean, that's what I would say. Something like that. In my conscience, I could not convict this guy based on everything we just heard, and I hope you all agree with me. You know, and make the moral argument. And people do that all the time in a jury. I know. That 12 angry men. They violate so many rules in that. But what happens back there stays back there. Anything else?
Did you say 12 angry men was not accurate?
It's like I watched Top Gun with an actual Navy pilot, and he's like, none of this is real. Right? So it's the same idea as watching a volleyball. Right? Yeah, exactly. Right. So same watching Law and Order with a lawyer is like, no, they can't do that. Yeah. They take some fictional license up. So this is an important power against tyranny. I mean, it's not ever going to be used. I'm not worried about it being used to acquit a murderer. I mean, but it can be used to stop free speech. Somebody using their free speech. It can be stopped. It can stop a drug, some ridiculous drug case. If somebody brings their kid from another state who has cancer and they want to use medical marijuana on the kid. People do that. There's what they call marijuana refugees that come to Colorado for that very purpose. Well, if the feds arrested them for that, the federal jury, I think that is a legitimate, honest use of nullification. Oh, and there was a guy in North Carolina. It wasn't Bitcoin, but he had some kind of alternative currency, and the feds arrested him. That's another example. A jury could go, I don't care. I'm not going to put somebody in jail or convict somebody for putting out an alternative currency because that's a tyrannical law.
So income tax dodgers and all that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So, fight the power. Thank you.